They laughed when I asked about the enterprise-grade networking equipment, rolled their eyes when I mentioned needing something compatible with military encryption protocols. The teenage sales associate actually snickered and suggested I try the pretty pink laptops in the consumer section instead. But when that phone call came through the store speakers asking for Major Peterson from Military Contract Division, every smirk died on their faces. Because they didn't realize that sometimes the most dangerous tech experts are the ones who don't need to prove anything to minimum wage salespeople. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Walking into Tech World Supercenter that Tuesday morning felt like stepping into a teenage boy's fever dream. Neon lights pulsed along every aisle. Gaming chairs that cost more than most people's rent sat on display like thrones, and the bass from demo speakers rattled my rib cage from 30 feet away. I needed very specific equipment for a project that couldn't wait for online ordering, so here I was, navigating through aisles of RGB-lit everything and overpriced cables. I'm Sarah Peterson, and at 34, I've learned that dressing down usually gets me better service in tech stores. Jeans, a plain navy sweater, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Nothing that screams, "Look at me," or "I have money." Just a woman who knows exactly what she needs and wants to get in and out without drama. What I hadn't counted on was walking into a store where customer service seemed to depend entirely on whether you looked like you belonged in their target demographic. The first red flag should have been the way the employees looked at me when I walked in. Not welcoming, not helpful, just sizing me up like they were trying to decide if I was worth their time. The place smelled like new electronics and that particular brand of masculine overconfidence that comes from young men who think knowing about graphics cards makes them tech gods. I made my way to the networking section, scanning the shelves for what I needed. Enterprise switches, managed routers, something that could handle the kind of data throughput and security requirements that most consumers never even think about. The selection was limited, but there were a few pieces that might work if I could verify the specifications. "Can I help you find something?" The voice came from behind me, dripping with the kind of condescension usually reserved for explaining simple concepts to children. I turned to see a kid who couldn't have been more than 19, his Tech World polo stretched tight over a soft frame that suggested more time spent behind gaming monitors than doing anything physical. His name tag read Kyle in that aggressive font companies use when they want to seem edgy. "I'm looking for managed switches with Layer 3 routing capabilities," I said, keeping my voice neutral and professional. "Something that can handle VLAN segmentation and supports advanced encryption protocols." Kyle blinked at me like I'd just spoken in ancient Greek. Then he did that thing that immediately makes my blood pressure spike. He smiled that patronizing smile that says he thinks I'm just repeating words I heard somewhere without understanding them. "Oh, you mean like a router?" he said slowly, like he was helping me work through a difficult concept. "Those are over in the home networking section. We have some really nice ones that are super easy to set up. They even have apps now, so you don't need to worry about all that technical stuff." I took a breath, counted to 3, and tried again. "No, I need managed Layer 3 switches, enterprise grade, the kind that require console access for configuration." His smile got wider, which somehow made it worse. "Right, but those are really complicated, like you need special training to use them. Are you setting up a network for your husband's business or something? Because we have business consultants who could probably help with that kind of thing." The assumption hit me like a slap. Not just that I didn't know what I was talking about, but that any technical knowledge I might possess had to be secondhand, borrowed from some man in my life who was the real expert. I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, the same feeling I'd gotten in briefing rooms full of men who assumed my presence was decorative until I started talking about packet routing and network architecture. "I'm setting it up for my own project," I said, my voice getting a little sharper despite my efforts to stay calm. "And I know exactly what I need." Kyle's expression shifted slightly, like he was trying to recalibrate his approach. Look, I'm just trying to help. These enterprise switches are like really expensive, and they're super complicated to configure. Most people end up returning them because they can't figure them out. How about I show you some of our gaming routers? They're actually pretty powerful, and they have really cool LED displays. I stared at him for a moment, processing the layers of condescension packed into that response. He dismissed my technical requirements, assumed I couldn't handle complex equipment, and tried to redirect me to something with pretty lights like I was a child distracted by shiny objects. Gaming routers, I repeated flatly. Yeah, they're designed for high performance. Some of them even have military-grade encryption. He said military-grade like it was a marketing buzzword, not something that actually meant anything specific. That's when I noticed we had an audience. 2 other employees had drifted over, probably sensing drama or just curious about the conversation. One was older, maybe mid-20s, wearing the same company polo, but with a manager's badge that read Trevor. The other looked like Kyle's younger brother, all acne and oversized clothes and the kind of nervous energy that comes from working retail but still feeling superior to customers. "Problem over here?" Trevor asked, his tone suggesting that any problem was probably my fault for being difficult. "I'm trying to buy managed switches," I explained, keeping my voice level. "Your employee seems to think I don't understand what I'm asking for." Trevor glanced at Kyle, who shrugged like I was being unreasonable. "Ma'am, those switches are really complex. They're designed for IT professionals with years of training. Maybe if you could tell us what you're actually trying to accomplish, we could recommend something more appropriate." More appropriate? Like a domesticated version of technology, dumbed down for someone like me? I felt my jaw tighten, but I tried one more time. "I need to establish secure network segments with controlled inter-VLAN routing and support for IPsX tunneling. The switches need to integrate with existing PKI infrastructure and handle encrypted traffic without performance degradation." The 3 of them exchanged looks, and I could practically see the wheels turning. Either I was some kind of tech professional trying to test them, or I was parroting words I didn't understand from some manual or website. Clearly, they'd decided on the latter. "Okay," Trevor said in that slow, careful tone people use when they think they're dealing with someone delusional. "Those are definitely technical terms, but setting up that kind of infrastructure requires specialized knowledge and certification. Are you working with an IT consultant who gave you that list of requirements?" "I am the IT consultant," I said, my patience finally starting to fray around the edges. Kyle actually laughed, a short, disbelieving snort that he tried to cover up as a cough, but I heard it. The younger employee grinned, enjoying the show. Trevor just looked skeptical, like I was claiming to be an astronaut or a professional athlete. "Right," Trevor said. "Well, we have liability issues with selling enterprise equipment to customers who might not know how to use it safely. These switches can be dangerous if they're configured incorrectly. They could crash entire networks or create security vulnerabilities." I stared at him, trying to process what I'd just heard. Dangerous switches? Like I might accidentally hurt myself with a networking device? Like I was some kind of hazard to myself and others if left alone with enterprise hardware? "Dangerous," I repeated. "Network equipment can be tricky," the younger employee chimed in, apparently feeling brave enough to join the conversation. "Like, you could accidentally create a broadcast storm or misconfigure the routing tables. It's not really something you want to mess around with unless you really know what you're doing." He said it with the confidence of someone who'd probably just learned those terms last week in some online certification course. A kid who thought reading a few forum posts made him qualified to lecture adults about network security. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, that familiar mix of anger and disappointment that comes from being systematically underestimated. Not just my technical knowledge, but my basic competence as a human being. The assumption that I was either lying about my expertise or too stupid to understand the consequences of my own decisions. "I see," I said quietly. "So you won't sell me the equipment I need because you think I'm too incompetent to use it safely?" Trevor held up his hands like he was trying to calm down an irrational person. "Hey, I'm not saying incompetent. I'm just saying these are professional-grade tools that require professional-level knowledge. We have to protect our customers from making expensive mistakes." "For your own safety," Kyle added, nodding like he was being helpful. The condescension was so thick I could practically taste it. Three men, none of whom had asked about my background or qualifications, had collectively decided that I was incapable of handling equipment I'd been working with for over a decade. They'd made assumptions about my technical knowledge based entirely on my appearance, dismissed my specific requirements, and were now refusing to sell me products I needed while framing it as protection from my own ignorance. I looked around the networking section, taking in the shelves full of equipment I could configure in my sleep, thinking about the projects I'd deployed, the networks I'd secured, the briefings I'd given to people whose security clearances would make these retail employees' heads spin. Then I looked back at the three faces staring at me with that particular mix of pity and superiority that makes retail workers feel powerful. "You know what?" I said, pulling out my phone. "Let me make a quick call." Trevor looked relieved, probably thinking I was going to call my husband or some male colleague who could translate my needs into language they'd take seriously. Kyle was still smirking, enjoying his little victory over the woman who thought she understood technology. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed, hit dial, and waited for the connection. The call went through on the second ring. "Tech World Supercenter, how may I direct your call?" The voice was professional, crisp, probably from their corporate customer service line. "This is Major Peterson from Military Contract Division. I need to speak with your store manager immediately regarding a procurement issue." The change in the atmosphere around me was instantaneous. Kyle's smirk evaporated like morning dew. Trevor's eyebrows shot up so fast I thought they might escape his forehead entirely. The younger employee took an actual step backward, suddenly looking like he wished he was anywhere else in the world. "One moment, please, Major Peterson. I'm connecting you directly to store manager Patricia Williams." The hold music lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt longer with three sets of eyes staring at me like I'd just revealed I was carrying a concealed weapon, which in the corporate world of defense contracts and military procurement, I essentially was. "Major Peterson?" A new voice came on the line, female, older, carrying the weight of someone who understood exactly how much money military contracts could represent. "Miss Williams, I am currently in your Riverside location attempting to procure networking equipment for a classified project. I'm encountering some resistance from your sales staff regarding enterprise-grade switches that fall well within standard military procurement guidelines." "I apologize for any inconvenience, Major. Can you describe the specific equipment you need?" I rattled off the model numbers and specifications, the same information I'd been trying to share with her employees for the past 20 minutes. She confirmed availability, pricing, and delivery options with the efficiency of someone who actually understood that time was money, and customer service meant helping people buy things, not protecting them from their own decisions. "Those items are definitely in stock at the Riverside location. I'm going to transfer you back to the floor, and I'll have someone assist you immediately. Will you be using a government purchase card for this transaction?" "Yes, with standard net 30 billing to the contracting office," I replied, watching Kyle's face go through several interesting color changes as the implications hit him. "Perfect. Please hold while I connect you with supervisory staff on the floor." The hold music went quiet for a moment, then the store's PA system crackled to life with an announcement that cut through the ambient noise of demo music and customer chatter. Supervisory staff to networking department for VIP customer assistance. Supervisory staff to networking department for VIP customer assistance. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Trevor looked like he was trying to disappear into the floor. Kyle had gone pale under his store lighting, probably realizing that his little power trip might have just cost him his job. The younger employee was staring at me like I'd just grown a second head. Within 30 seconds, I could see people moving toward our section with the kind of purposeful urgency that someone had just explained to them exactly how badly they'd screwed up. A woman in her 40s approached first, her manager's badge reading Patricia Williams and her expression suggesting she was having a very long day. "Major Peterson?" she asked, extending her hand with the kind of professional courtesy that should have been offered 20 minutes ago. "I'm Patricia Williams, store manager. I understand you're looking for enterprise networking equipment?" I shook her hand, noting how Trevor and Kyle suddenly found the floor very interesting to look at. "That's correct. I need managed Layer 3 switches for a secure network deployment. I've been trying to explain my requirements to your staff." Miss Williams glanced at Trevor, and something passed between them that suggested this conversation would be continuing later, probably in her office, probably without witnesses. "I apologize for any infusion," she said smoothly. "Let me personally ensure you get exactly what you need. Can you walk me through your specifications?" For the third time that morning, I explained my requirements. But this time, instead of condescending smiles and suggestions for gaming equipment, I got professional attention, technical questions that demonstrated actual knowledge, and the kind of customer service that had somehow been missing during my previous interactions. Miss Williams knew her inventory, understood the technical requirements, and within 10 minutes had identified 3 switches that would meet my needs. She arranged for immediate availability verification, discussed quantity discounts, and provided information about extended warranty options for government contracts. "These will definitely handle your VLAN segmentation requirements," she said, pulling up specifications on her tablet, "and they support the encryption protocols you mentioned. Installation services are available if needed, though I suspect you probably have that covered." "I do," I confirmed, appreciating that she wasn't making assumptions about my technical capabilities. While she processed the order, I became aware of the small crowd that had gathered at a respectful distance. Word had apparently spread that there was a VIP customer in networking, and several employees had found reasons to be in the area. Some looked curious, others seemed to be learning from watching how their manager handled a professional customer interaction. Kyle and Trevor remained nearby, probably because they couldn't leave without making their situation worse, but they'd adopted the kind of invisible posture that suggested they were hoping to be forgotten. The younger employee had actually disappeared entirely, probably using this as an opportunity to find work in a different section of the store. "Your total comes to $4,300, Miss Williams said as she finalized the transaction. "Will you need assistance loading this into your vehicle?" I handed over my government purchase card, noting how the sight of it seemed to make Kyle shrink even further into himself. Government cards weren't something you saw every day in retail, and they carried implications about authority, budgets, and the kind of customer relationships that store managers cared about. "Loading assistance would be great," I said. "I'm parked in the fire lane out front." Her eyebrows raised slightly at that, but she just nodded and made arrangements for someone to bring a cart and help with the equipment. Government vehicles had certain parking privileges, and she clearly understood that arguing about fire lanes wasn't worth the potential complications. As we waited for the equipment to be gathered, Miss Williams took the opportunity to do what good managers do in situations like this. She gathered information. "If I may ask, Major, what was the nature of the difficulty you experienced with our staff? I want to make sure we address any training issues." I glanced at Trevor and Kyle, who were both trying to look like they weren't listening while obviously hanging on every word. Part of me wanted to let them off the hook, to chalk it up to miscommunication and move on. But I thought about the other women who might walk into this store, the other customers who might be dismissed or condescended to because they didn't fit someone's idea of what a technical person looked like. "Your employees assumed I didn't understand the equipment I was requesting," I said quietly, keeping my voice professional but clear. "They suggested I needed simpler alternatives and refused to sell me what I needed because they decided I wasn't qualified to use it safely." Miss Williams' expression went carefully neutral, the look of someone processing information that was going to result in difficult conversations later. "I see. And this was based on?" "Apparently on the assumption that women don't understand enterprise networking equipment," I replied, "or that any technical knowledge I might claim to have must be second-hand from a male colleague." The silence that followed was the kind that makes everyone uncomfortable, heavy with the weight of implications and potential consequences. I could see other employees glancing our way, probably wondering what kind of complaint was being discussed. Kyle opened his mouth like he was going to say something, probably to defend himself or explain his position, but Trevor grabbed his arm and shook his head slightly. Smart move on Trevor's part. Anything Kyle said at this point was only going to make things worse. "I apologize," Ms. Williams said finally. "That's completely unacceptable, and it doesn't represent the standards we expect from our team. We'll be addressing this immediately." A young man with a hand truck appeared, loaded with my switches and looking professional in a way that suggested he'd been briefed on the situation. "Your equipment is ready, Major Peterson," he said respectfully. "Would you like me to help you load it?" I followed him toward the front of the store, aware that our little group had attracted the attention of other customers and employees. Word was spreading through the store's informal communication network the way it does in any workplace. Something significant was happening, someone important was involved, and the regular power dynamics had been temporarily suspended. As we walked past the gaming section with its flashy displays and RGB lighting, I thought about Kyle's assumption that I'd be distracted by pretty colors, his certainty that I couldn't handle real technology. The irony wasn't lost on me that the most complex technical challenges I'd worked on involved systems where failure could mean life or death, where security wasn't about protecting credit card numbers but about protecting national assets. The equipment loaded easily into my government vehicle, the kind of unmarked SUV that suggested official business without advertising exactly what kind. The young employee who'd helped with loading was courteous and efficient, asking if I needed anything else and thanking me for my service when he noticed the military decals on my identification. Miss Williams walked me to my vehicle, continuing the kind of customer service recovery that good managers excel at. "Major Peterson, I want to personally ensure this doesn't happen again. Would you be willing to share your direct contact information?"
"I'd like to have one of our technical specialists reach out to discuss your ongoing equipment needs." I gave her my business card, watching her eyes widen slightly as she read the full title. Major Sarah Peterson, Network Security Division, Defense Information Systems Agency. Not just military, but the kind of military technical role that required security clearances and advanced certifications. "I'll have someone contact you within 24 hours, she promised, slipping the card into her jacket pocket like it was made of gold. "And Major, thank you for giving us the opportunity to make this right." I climbed into my vehicle and started the engine, noting through the store windows that Trevor and Kyle were having what looked like an intense conversation with Miss Williams near the customer service counter. Other employees were pretending not to watch, while obviously trying to catch pieces of the discussion. As I pulled away from the store, I reflected on how quickly the situation had changed once my actual credentials became clear. The same employees who dismissed me as incompetent 20 minutes earlier were now probably worried about their jobs, their assumptions about customer competence permanently readjusted. But the experience left me thinking about all the women who might walk into similar situations without the authority of military rank to back them up, without government purchase cards to change attitudes, without the institutional power to demand respect. How many brilliant engineers, talented technicians, and knowledgeable professionals were dismissed every day because they didn't match someone's stereotype of technical expertise? The equipment I'd purchased would integrate perfectly into the secure network I was building, handling encrypted traffic and complex routing protocols with the reliability that justified its enterprise price point. But more than that, it represented a small victory in the ongoing battle to be taken seriously in technical fields, to have expertise recognized regardless of gender or appearance. My phone buzzed with a text from my project manager. "Equipment acquired? Timeline still on track? I typed back a quick confirmation, already mentally moving on to the next phase of the deployment, the configuration challenges that would require the kind of deep technical knowledge that retail employees had assured me I couldn't possibly possess. But I also made a mental note to recommend TechWorld for future procurement, not because of the initial experience, but because of how quickly they'd corrected course once the situation became clear. Organizations that could learn from mistakes and adjust their approach were worth working with, even if the learning process was occasionally painful for everyone involved. The afternoon sun was bright on the windshield as I headed back to base, a trunk full of enterprise switches and a renewed appreciation for the complexity of assumptions we all make about each other. Sometimes the most dangerous thing about underestimating people isn't the immediate consequences. It's the opportunities you miss and the relationships you damage along the way. And sometimes the quiet woman looking at networking equipment knows exactly what she's doing, has the authority to back up her expertise, and carries credentials that would surprise the people trying to protect her from her own decisions. The trick is recognizing expertise before you have to learn about it the hard way, through corporate apologies and emergency customer service recovery. 3 days later, I found myself back at TechWorld, though not by choice. The secure communication array I'd been building had run into compatibility issues that required additional hardware, and my usual suppliers couldn't deliver on the timeline the project demanded. Sometimes military operations don't wait for convenient procurement schedules. Walking through those glass doors again felt different this time. The same neon lights pulsed along the aisles, the same gaming displays dominated the entrance, but there was an undercurrent of awareness that hadn't been there before. A few employees glanced my way with recognition, though whether that was good or bad remained to be seen. I needed single-mode fiber optic transceivers with specific wavelength compatibility, something that most retail stores didn't stock but TechWorld occasionally carried for their enterprise customers. The kind of component that looked simple but required precise technical knowledge to select correctly. One wrong specification and months of network planning could be worthless. The networking section looked the same but felt different. Kyle was there, restocking shelves with the kind of focused attention that suggested he was trying very hard to look busy and professional. When he saw me approaching, his entire body language shifted into something that looked like a cross between respect and terror. "Ma'am," he said quickly, straightening up and wiping his hands on his polo shirt, "can I help you find something today?" The transformation was remarkable. 3 days ago, he'd been condescending and dismissive. Now he was practically vibrating with nervous energy, clearly remembering how our last interaction had ended. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "I need single-mode fiber optic transceivers," I said, keeping my voice neutral. 10 gigabit, 1310 nanometer wavelength, LC connector interface. His face went through several expressions as he processed the request. Recognition that these were specific technical requirements, uncertainty about whether he understood them correctly, and what looked like genuine desire to be helpful this time. "Let me check our inventory." He pulled out a handheld scanner. His fingers moved across the screen with more confidence than I'd expected, and after a moment he nodded. "We have those in stock. They're in the secure storage area. I'll need to get a supervisor to access them." Progress. He wasn't questioning my competence or suggesting alternatives. He was treating me like a customer who knew what she wanted and was prepared to help me get it. The power of institutional correction at work. "That would be great," I said, noting how carefully he was choosing his words, how professional his tone had become. Kyle disappeared toward the back of the store, and I found myself alone in the networking section, surrounded by equipment I'd been working with since before some of these employees were born. The irony wasn't lost on me that the same shelves that had been treated like forbidden territory 3 days ago were now accessible simply because everyone understood who they were dealing with. "Major Peterson?" The voice came from behind me, female, confident. I turned to see a woman in her late 20s approaching, wearing the same TechWorld polo, but carrying herself with the bearing of someone who actually understood the technology she was selling. Her name tag read Jessica and included a small certification badge that suggested real technical training. "That's me," I confirmed, curious about this new player in the dynamic. "I'm Jessica Martinez, Senior Technical Specialist." She extended her hand. "Miss Williams asked me to make sure you get exactly what you need today. I understand you're looking for fiber optic transceivers?" Finally, someone who introduced herself with actual credentials rather than just attitude.
I shook her hand, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact that suggested confidence in her own expertise. 10 gig single mode, 1310 nanometer wavelength, LC connector interface. Her face lit up with the kind of recognition that comes from someone who actually works with this equipment. Excellent choice for long-distance runs. Are you extending an existing network or building new infrastructure? A technical question that demonstrated understanding of how these components fit into larger systems. This was already going better than my previous visit. Extending existing infrastructure, I said.
Need to maintain compatibility with legacy equipment while upgrading bandwidth capacity. Smart approach, Jessica nodded. Incremental upgrades are usually more stable than wholesale replacements. How many transceivers are you looking at? Kyle reappeared with Trevor in tow, both of them looking somewhat uncertain about the interaction they walked into. Trevor's expression suggested he was still processing the events of 3 days ago, probably wondering if this visit would result in another uncomfortable conversation with his manager. "I've got authorization to access the secure storage," Trevor said carefully, addressing Jessica rather than me directly. Interesting choice. Either he was being appropriately deferential to the technical specialist, or he was still too intimidated by our previous encounter to engage with me directly. "Perfect," Jessica said. "Major Peterson needs single-mode transceivers. I'll handle the technical verification if you can pull the inventory." As Trevor headed toward the storage area, Jessica continued our conversation with the kind of professional competence that should have been standard but felt refreshing after my previous experience. "Are you working with any specific distance requirements?" she asked. "Single mode at 1310 can handle significant runs, but if you're looking at anything over 40 kilometers, you might want to consider the 1550 nanometer variants for better performance." I was impressed. She not only understood the technical specifications, but was thinking about implementation considerations that most retail employees wouldn't even know existed. This was the kind of consultation that actually added value rather than just processing transactions. "Maximum run will be about 15 kilometers," I said, "but I need compatibility with existing DWDM infrastructure, so 1310 is the right choice." "Absolutely," she agreed. "DWDM wavelength coordination is critical. Nothing worse than installing new equipment and discovering it interferes with existing channels." Behind her, I could see Kyle listening to our conversation with the expression of someone trying to learn a foreign language. Some of the technical terms were probably familiar to him from training materials or product specifications, but the practical application discussion was clearly beyond his current experience level. Trevor returned with a locked case containing the transceivers, and Jessica immediately began the verification process. She checked model numbers against my specifications, confirmed connector types, and even pulled up compatibility matrices on her tablet to ensure everything would integrate properly. "These should be exactly what you need," she said, showing me the components. "All the specifications match your requirements, and I can confirm compatibility with standard Cisco interfaces." The transceivers looked like what they were: precision optical components that cost more than most people's monthly salary and required careful handling. No pretty lights, no consumer-friendly packaging, just professional-grade equipment for serious applications. "I'll take 12 units," I said, doing the mental math for the network topology I was building, plus spares for redundancy planning. Excellent planning. Optical components can fail without warning, especially in harsh environments. Having spares on hand can save weeks of downtime. As she processed the order, I noticed that we'd attracted attention again. Word had apparently spread through the store that the VIP customer was back, and several employees had found reasons to be in the networking section. But this time, the attention felt different. Less like curiosity about drama, and more like people trying to learn from watching a professional interaction. One of the employees watching was a young woman, probably early 20s, wearing a trainee badge and taking notes on a small pad. She was clearly studying how Jessica handled the technical consultation, learning from someone who actually knew how to engage with knowledgeable customers. "Total for 12 transceivers comes to $8,400, Jessica said as she finalized the pricing. "Government pricing includes the standard warranty plus extended support options." I handed over my purchase card again, noting how smoothly the transaction proceeded when handled by someone who understood both the technology and the customer. No questioning of my competence, no suggestions for simpler alternatives, just professional service that treated me like the expert I was. "Will you need any installation support?" Jessica asked as the payment processed. "We have certified technicians who can handle fiber optic termination and testing." "I'll handle the installation myself," I said, appreciating that she offered without assuming I needed help. "But thanks for the option." "Of course, you clearly know what you're doing." She handed me the receipt and a business card. "If you run into any compatibility issues or need additional components, feel free to reach out directly. My extension goes straight to the technical support line." As we finished the transaction, Trevor approached with what looked like carefully prepared words. "Major Peterson, I wanted to apologize again for the confusion during your last visit. We've implemented additional training protocols to ensure all our staff can better assist customers with advanced technical requirements." The apology sounded genuine, though I suspected it had been crafted with input from Miss Williams and possibly the corporate office. Companies that held government contracts took customer service failures seriously, especially when they involved military personnel. "I appreciate that," I said. "Today's experience was much more professional." Kyle stepped forward, looking nervous but determined. "Ma'am, I also wanted to apologize. I made assumptions I shouldn't have made, and I didn't provide the level of service you deserved." His apology felt more personal than Trevor's, like he'd actually thought about what had happened and recognized his mistakes. Maybe there was hope for him yet. "Apology accepted," I said. "We all make assumptions sometimes. The important thing is learning from them." As I prepared to leave, the trainee who'd been taking notes approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, Major Peterson, I'm Emma and I'm new to the technical side. Would it be okay if I asked you a question about network architecture?" Interesting.
Someone who recognized an opportunity to learn from an expert rather than just watching from a distance. I gestured for her to continue. "I've been studying networking concepts, but I'm having trouble understanding when to use Layer 2 versus Layer 3 switching in complex environments. The textbooks give basic guidelines, but real-world applications seem more complicated." A good question that demonstrated she was thinking beyond memorized definitions to practical implementation challenges. The kind of curiosity that separated people who would become real technical professionals from those who would remain script followers. Layer 2 switching is about efficient traffic forwarding within broadcast domains, I explained, noting that Jessica had stopped what she was doing to listen. Layer 3 adds routing intelligence and security segmentation. In complex environments, you typically use Layer 3 at distribution points to control traffic flow between different network segments. Emma nodded, writing quickly. "So it's about controlling where traffic can go, not just moving it efficiently." Exactly. Layer 2 is about speed. Layer 3 is about control. In secure environments, that control becomes critical for maintaining network segmentation and preventing unauthorized access. "That makes so much more sense than the textbook explanations," Emma said, looking genuinely grateful. "Thank you for taking the time to explain it." I handed her one of my business cards, noting the surprised expressions around me. If you're serious about networking, consider looking into military or government contractor positions. They offer excellent training opportunities for people who want to work with advanced systems. As I loaded the transceivers into my vehicle, I reflected on how different this visit had been from my first experience at Tech World. Same store, same basic staff, but completely different dynamics once everyone understood the ground rules. The power of clear communication and mutual respect at work. Jessica's professionalism had been particularly impressive. She demonstrated that it was possible to provide excellent technical service without condescension or assumptions, treating customers as knowledgeable partners rather than problems to be solved. That was the kind of customer service that built long-term relationships and repeat business. The training session that Trevor had mentioned was clearly having an impact. Kyle's transformation from dismissive to respectful suggested that sometimes institutional correction could actually change behavior, not just suppress it temporarily. Whether that change would stick remained to be seen, but it was encouraging progress. Emma's curiosity represented something even more important: the next generation of technical professionals learning to value expertise, regardless of where they found it. If she carried that attitude forward in her career, she'd be someone worth working with.
someone who could contribute to changing the culture of technical fields from the inside. My phone buzzed with a message from my project manager. Compatibility issues resolved, ready for component integration. I replied that I had the necessary hardware and would begin installation within the hour. The secure network was back on schedule, which meant the larger mission stayed on track. But as I drove back to base, I found myself thinking less about network topology and more about workplace dynamics. How many technical conversations happened every day where expertise was dismissed or ignored based on assumptions about who could or couldn't understand complex systems? How many opportunities for learning and collaboration were lost because people couldn't see past their preconceptions? The answer was probably more than anyone wanted to admit. But experiences like today suggested that change was possible, when organizations committed to it, when individuals were willing to examine their assumptions and adjust their behavior accordingly. Progress wasn't always fast or dramatic, but it was real when people chose to make it happen. The transceivers I'd purchased would enable secure communications across multiple facilities, supporting operations that required absolute reliability and precision. But they represented something more than just technical components. They were the result of professional interactions based on competence and respect rather than assumptions and stereotypes. And sometimes that kind of progress, one conversation at a time, was how real change happened in the world. Not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through daily choices to treat each other as capable professionals deserving of otherwise. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. 2 weeks passed before I found myself standing in TechWorld's parking lot again, this time with a very different mission. The secure network deployment had been a complete success, exceeding performance benchmarks and earning commendations from the program director. But success in military projects often led to expansion requests, and expansion meant more equipment needs. This visit wasn't about emergency procurement or compatibility issues. It was about establishing TechWorld as a preferred vendor for ongoing government contracts, which meant bringing in my procurement team for a formal evaluation. When military organizations decide to build long-term relationships with suppliers, the process involved multiple stakeholders and significant financial implications. I walked through the entrance with Commander James Rodriguez and Dr. Angela Chen, both of whom carried the kind of security clearances that made store managers nervous and accounting departments excited. Rodriguez oversaw network infrastructure for 3 military installations, while Dr. Chen managed cybersecurity protocols for classified research facilities. Between the 3 of us, we represented purchasing authority that could transform a retail store's annual revenue. The store felt different with my colleagues beside me. Employees noticed us immediately, not just because of our professional bearing, but because word had apparently spread through the company that Major Peterson's return might signal bigger opportunities. Corporate relationships with government agencies were the kind of business development that changed careers and quarterly reports. Miss Williams appeared within minutes of our arrival, accompanied by someone I hadn't met before, a tall man in his 50s wearing a suit instead of the standard polo shirt. His bearing suggested senior management, probably regional or corporate level. Miss Williams said warmly, "Welcome back. I'd like you to meet Robert Harrison, our regional defense contracts coordinator." Harrison extended his hand with the confident grip of someone accustomed to dealing with government customers. "Major Peterson, it's an honor to meet you. I've heard excellent things about your technical expertise and the projects you're working on." I introduced Rodriguez and Dr. Chen, watching Harrison's expression as he processed their titles and affiliations. The math was simple. 3 senior military technical professionals didn't visit retail stores together unless significant procurement decisions were being made. "We're here to evaluate TechWorld's capabilities for ongoing government contracting," I explained. "The Defense Information Systems Agency is expanding its approved vendor network, and we're considering adding TechWorld based on recent positive experiences." The transformation in Harrison's demeanor was immediate and complete. This wasn't just about individual sales anymore. This was about establishing TechWorld as a recognized defense contractor with access to government purchasing programs worth millions of dollars annually.
"We would be honored to support DIS's mission," Harrison said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood exactly what this opportunity represented. "Let me introduce you to our technical team and show you our full capabilities." Within minutes, we were surrounded by TechWorld's most experienced staff members, including Jessica and several other technical specialists I hadn't met before.
The contrast with my first visit was stark. Instead of dismissive teenagers questioning my competence, I was dealing with professionals who understood both the technology and the business implications of government contracts. Our enterprise division handles complex networking deployments for Fortune 500 companies and government agencies, Harrison explained as we walked through the store. We maintain security clearances for classified installations and provide full lifecycle support for critical infrastructure projects. Rodriguez asked detailed questions about inventory management, supply chain security, and technical support capabilities. Dr. Chen focused on cybersecurity protocols and vendor qualification processes. Both were clearly impressed by the level of sophistication they were seeing, which hadn't been obvious during my consumer-level interactions. As we toured the facility, I noticed Kyle and Trevor observing from a respectful distance. Both looked professionally dressed and attentive, clearly hoping to be included in what was obviously an important business discussion. The transformation from my first encounter was remarkable. The same employees who had questioned my technical knowledge were now eager to demonstrate their own competence to government evaluators. Major Peterson has been instrumental in helping us improve our customer service protocols, Ms. Williams explained to Harrison. Her feedback led to enhanced training programs that better prepare our staff to work with technical professionals. An interesting way to frame what had essentially been a customer service disaster followed by corporate damage control. But the results spoke for themselves. The staff interactions I was witnessing today were professional, knowledgeable, and focused on customer needs rather than assumptions about customer capability. Jessica led us through the technical demonstration area where enterprise equipment was set up for testing and evaluation. Network switches, security appliances, and communication systems were configured in working environments that allowed customers to verify compatibility and performance before making purchasing decisions. "This is impressive," Dr. Chen commented as Jessica explained the testing protocols. "Most vendors require us to purchase equipment before we can validate it meets our requirements." "Government customers have unique needs," Jessica replied. "We've learned that upfront validation saves everyone time and money in the long run." The comment reflected a level of understanding about government procurement that went beyond standard retail operations. Someone had clearly invested in training their staff to understand how military and federal customers operated, what their decision-making processes looked like, and how to support those processes effectively. Harrison guided us toward a conference room I hadn't known existed, equipped with secure communications equipment and presentation systems that suggested regular use for classified discussions. The level of infrastructure was surprising for a retail operation, indicating serious investment in government customer capabilities. "We understand that defense contractors have specific requirements," Harrison explained as we settled around a polished conference table. "Security clearances, supply chain validation, performance guarantees, extended support contracts. We've built our government division specifically to meet those needs." Rodriguez leaned forward, clearly interested. "What about procurement timelines? Military operations don't wait for standard delivery schedules. We maintain strategic inventory specifically for defense customers. Critical components are pre-positioned to support emergency requirements, and we have expedited logistics partnerships that can deliver anywhere in the continental United States within 24 hours. The conversation continued for over an hour, covering everything from technical specifications to contractual terms to long-term partnership opportunities. Both Rodriguez and Dr. Chen asked increasingly detailed questions, and Harrison's team provided answers that demonstrated genuine understanding of government requirements. What impressed me most wasn't just the technical competence being displayed, but the cultural shift that had clearly occurred since my first visit. The same organization that had initially dismissed my expertise was now actively courting government business by emphasizing their ability to work with technical professionals like me.
"I think we've seen enough to make a preliminary recommendation," Rodriguez said eventually. TechWorld appears to have the technical capabilities and business infrastructure to support DIS's requirements. Dr. Chen nodded agreement. The vendor qualification process will take several weeks, but based on today's evaluation, I'm optimistic about the outcome. Harrison's expression suggested Christmas morning, birthday announcement all rolled into one. Government vendor qualification wasn't just about individual contracts. It was about access to a customer base that valued reliability over price, that made multi-year commitments, and that paid invoices promptly. As we prepared to leave, Emma approached hesitantly. She'd clearly been waiting for an opportunity to join the conversation without interrupting the formal business discussions. "Major Peterson, I wanted to thank you for the career advice you gave me," she said. "I've been accepted into a cybersecurity certification program, and I'm hoping to apply for government contractor positions when I complete it." "That's excellent news," I replied, genuinely pleased by her progress. The field needs more people who understand both the technical and security aspects of network infrastructure. "Would it be appropriate to ask if DISA has internship programs?" she asked, glancing nervously at Rodriguez and Dr. Chen. Rodriguez smiled, clearly recognizing ambition when he saw it. "We do have internship opportunities for qualified candidates. If you complete your certification and maintain good academic standing, you should definitely apply." The exchange represented something important beyond individual career development. Emma had recognized an opportunity to learn from experts, had taken action to improve her qualifications, and was now positioning herself for career advancement in a field that desperately needed talented professionals. Kyle had been standing nearby, clearly wanting to join the conversation but uncertain about whether his previous interactions with me made that appropriate. I caught his eye and gestured him over. "Kyle has been working hard to improve his technical knowledge," I said to the group. "He's shown real growth in understanding customer needs and providing appropriate support." His relief was visible, along with what looked like genuine gratitude for the professional recognition. The kid who had initially dismissed my expertise was now receiving career encouragement from the same person, and the irony wasn't lost on either of us. "If you're interested in government contracting," Dr. Chen said to Kyle, "focus on security certifications and supply chain management. Those skills are always in demand." As we walked back through the store, I reflected on how completely the dynamics had changed. The same physical space that had initially felt hostile and dismissive now buzzed with professional energy and mutual respect. Employees who had once questioned my competence were now seeking career advice and professional opportunities. The transformation hadn't happened by accident. It was the result of institutional commitment to change, individual willingness to examine assumptions and adjust behavior, and recognition that treating customers as competent professionals was better business than protecting them from their own supposed ignorance. Harrison walked us to our vehicle, continuing to discuss contract terms and implementation timelines. The conversation had moved from whether TechWorld could support government customers to how quickly they could begin doing so. From my perspective, that represented success not just for my procurement mission, but for the broader goal of changing how technical professionals were treated in retail environments. "Major Peterson," Harrison said as we reached my SUV, "I want to personally thank you for giving us the opportunity to earn your trust. The feedback you provided helped us recognize areas where we needed to improve, and your willingness to work with us, despite initial difficulties, has opened doors we didn't even know existed." The statement was corporate speak, but it reflected genuine appreciation for the business opportunity we were providing. More importantly, it suggested understanding that customer relationships were built on respect and competence rather than assumptions and condescension. Rodriguez and Dr. Chen were clearly satisfied with the evaluation results. As we drove away from TechWorld, they discussed implementation strategies and contract structures with the enthusiasm of people who had found a vendor capable of meeting their requirements. "That was surprisingly impressive," Dr. Chen commented. "I expected a standard retail operation with limited technical depth. What we found was a sophisticated supplier with real government contracting capabilities." "The transformation was remarkable," Rodriguez agreed. From the initial issues you described to today's professional presentation, they've clearly invested significant effort in improving their customer service approach. I found myself thinking about the broader implications of what we'd witnessed. Organizations could change when they recognize the value of treating customers as competent professionals. Individuals could grow when given feedback and opportunities to improve. Business relationships could develop when built on mutual respect rather than assumptions about capability. The secure network I'd built with TechWorld's components was performing flawlessly, supporting classified operations with the reliability that military missions demanded. But the professional relationships that had developed through that process were potentially more valuable than any individual procurement transaction. 3 weeks later, I received an email from Emma announcing that she'd been accepted into DISA's internship program. Kyle had enrolled in cybersecurity certification courses and was applying for technical specialist positions with government contractors. Jessica had been promoted to senior technical consultant and was leading TechWorld's expansion into defense contracting. The individual career developments were gratifying, but they represented something larger: the ripple effects of changing institutional culture and individual attitudes. When organizations committed to treating customers as competent professionals, when individuals chose to examine their assumptions and adjust their behavior, the results extended far beyond any single transaction or interaction. My phone buzzed with a text from my project manager. TechWorld approved as preferred vendor, first contract signed this morning. The message represented successful completion of a complex procurement evaluation, but it also marked the beginning of a long-term business relationship built on mutual respect and professional competence. As I reviewed the contract terms, I thought about that first visit to TechWorld when teenage sales associates had questioned my technical knowledge and suggested I might be safer with gaming equipment and pretty lights. The contrast with today's approved vendor status was stark, but it demonstrated what was possible when people chose to learn from their mistakes rather than defend them. The defense contracting world was small, and reputation mattered more than price in most procurement decisions. TechWorld's willingness to acknowledge problems, implement solutions, and commit to professional service had transformed them from a retail store with customer service issues into a qualified government supplier with significant growth potential. More importantly, the experience had demonstrated that change was possible when organizations and individuals chose to make it happen. Not through dramatic confrontations or corporate mandates, but through daily choices to treat each other as competent professionals deserving of respect until proven otherwise. Sometimes, the most effective way to change workplace culture wasn't through policy directives or training programs, but through simply expecting better and refusing to accept less. When customers demanded professional service, when employees committed to providing it, and when organizations supported both, the results could exceed everyone's expectations. The next time someone walked into TechWorld looking for enterprise networking equipment, they would encounter staff members who understood that expertise came in many forms, that assumptions about customer competence were usually wrong, and that treating people as professionals was not just good customer service but good business practice. And sometimes that kind of transformation, one interaction at a time, was how real progress happened in the world. 6 months after TechWorld became an approved government vendor, I found myself walking through their doors one final time before my transfer to a new assignment. The Pentagon had offered me a position leading cybersecurity initiatives for emerging technologies, and I'd accepted the challenge of building networks that didn't yet exist for threats that hadn't yet been identified. The store looked different again, but this time the changes were physical rather than cultural. A dedicated government contracting section had been established near the back, with secure consultation rooms and displays of enterprise equipment that never would have been visible during my first visit. Professional lighting replaced the gaming-focused neon, and the staff wore business casual attire that suggested serious technical consulting rather than retail sales. Emma met me at the entrance, her new title of Junior Technical Specialist displayed prominently on a professional name tag. She'd completed her cybersecurity certification ahead of schedule and had been hired full-time after her internship with DISA ended. The transformation from uncertain trainee to confident professional was remarkable to witness. "Major Peterson," she said with a smile that combined warmth with professional respect, "Mr. Harrison asked me to escort you to the VIP consultation area. He's eager to discuss the expansion proposal with you." The VIP area was another new addition, designed specifically for high-value government customers who needed privacy for classified procurement discussions. Sound dampening, electronic shielding, and secure communications equipment created an environment where sensitive technical requirements could be discussed without security concerns. Harrison was waiting with a presentation that clearly represented weeks of preparation. Charts showing TechWorld's growth in government contracting, customer satisfaction metrics, and expansion plans for serving military installations across 3 additional states. The business development that had started with my initial complaint had evolved into a strategic initiative that was reshaping the company's entire operational model. Major Peterson, your feedback and subsequent business relationship have been transformative for TechWorld, Harrison began, his presentation polished and professional. Government contracting now represents 30% of our revenue, and we're projecting 50% growth in the next fiscal year. The numbers were impressive, but what interested me more was the cultural transformation they represented. An organization that had initially dismissed technical expertise based on assumptions about customer competence had evolved into a sophisticated supplier that actively recruited and developed technical talent. Kyle appeared in the consultation room wearing a shirt and tie instead of the polo uniform, his new title of Government Accounts Coordinator reflecting career advancement that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. He'd completed multiple technical certifications and had become TechWorld's primary liaison for military procurement projects. "Ma'am, I wanted to personally thank you for the opportunity to learn from my mistakes," he said. "The mentorship programs you recommended have been invaluable for developing my technical knowledge and customer service skills." The young man who had once mocked my technical competence was now managing multi-million-dollar government contracts and earning recognition for exceptional customer service. The irony was satisfying, but more importantly, it demonstrated that people could change when given proper feedback and support. Jessica joined us with a portfolio of case studies documenting successful government projects TechWorld had completed since becoming an approved vendor. Network deployments for military installations, cybersecurity upgrades for federal facilities, and emergency equipment provisions for classified operations. Each project reflected the kind of technical competence and professional service that had been missing during my initial visit. "We've hired 6 additional technical specialists with security clearances," Jessica reported, "and we're establishing partnerships with defense contractors to provide integrated solutions for complex military requirements." The expansion represented more than business growth. It showed an organization that had recognized the value of investing in technical expertise and professional development rather than relying on assumptions and dismissive attitudes to manage customer interactions. As Harrison continued his presentation, I reflected on the broader implications of what TechWorld had accomplished. They'd transformed from a retail operation with customer service problems into a sophisticated government contractor with national expansion plans. The change hadn't happened through corporate mandates or policy directives, but through recognizing that treating customers as competent professionals was better business than protecting them from their own supposed ignorance. We're also implementing mentorship programs for female employees interested in technical careers, Emma added, clearly proud of this initiative. The goal is to ensure that technical expertise is recognized and developed regardless of gender or background. The program addressed one of the root causes of my initial negative experience, the assumption that women couldn't understand complex technology. By actively developing female technical talent, TechWorld was working to prevent future incidents while creating career opportunities for qualified professionals. Dr. Chen arrived for the meeting representing DISA's Vendor Evaluation Board, accompanied by Colonel Martinez from the Pentagon's Procurement Division. Both carried briefcases that suggested official business beyond casual consultation, and their presence elevated the meeting from business development to formal government relations. TechWorld has exceeded performance expectations across all measurable criteria, Dr.
Chen announced, reviewing metrics that included delivery timelines, technical support quality, and customer satisfaction scores. Based on 18 months of successful collaboration, we're recommending expansion of their vendor authorization to include classified project support. The announcement represented a significant milestone for TechWorld. Classified project authorization required additional security clearances, enhanced facility protection, and demonstrated competence in handling sensitive government requirements. It was recognition that they'd evolved from retail supplier to trusted defense contractor.
Colonel Martinez opened his briefcase and retrieved a formal document bearing official seals and signatures. Tech World Industries is hereby authorized for classified procurement support up to secret level, effective immediately. Harrison's expression suggested he was trying very hard not to let his excitement show, but the magnitude of the authorization wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Secret-level contracting opened access to government projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars annually, transforming Tech World from regional supplier to national defense contractor. The ceremony was brief but significant, representing completion of a transformation that had begun with a customer service complaint and evolved into a comprehensive business relationship. From my perspective, it demonstrated that individual interactions could have far-reaching consequences when organizations chose to learn from feedback rather than dismiss it. As the formal proceedings concluded, Trevor approached with what looked like carefully prepared remarks. His role had evolved from reluctant supervisor to operations manager for government contracting, and his professional development reflected the same growth I'd witnessed in other Tech World employees. Major Peterson, I wanted to apologize one final time for my initial assumptions about your technical competence, he said, his words carrying genuine remorse. Your feedback changed not just how I interact with customers, but how I think about expertise and professional respect. The apology was unnecessary at this point, but it reflected personal growth that went beyond corporate training programs or policy changes. Individual recognition of mistakes and commitment to improvement was what made organizational transformation possible and sustainable. Emma had prepared a presentation about her internship experience and subsequent career development, crediting the opportunities that had emerged from my initial complaint for opening doors she hadn't known existed. Her story represented the positive ripple effects of demanding better customer service and professional treatment. I've been accepted into an advanced cybersecurity program at Georgetown, she announced, and I'll be working part-time with Tech World while completing my master's degree. The goal is to specialize in government network security and critical infrastructure protection. Her career trajectory demonstrated what was possible when organizations invested in developing technical talent rather than making assumptions about who could or couldn't understand complex systems. From uncertain trainee to cybersecurity specialist in less than 2 years, her progress reflected both individual ambition and institutional support. As the meeting concluded, Harrison presented me with a framed photograph of Tech World's government contracting team, along with a formal thank you letter recognizing my role in the company's transformation. The gesture was thoughtful, but more importantly, it acknowledged that customer feedback could be valuable when organizations chose to listen and act on it. Walking through the store one final time, I noticed details that reflected the cultural changes that had occurred. Technical reference materials were prominently displayed. Female employees were well represented in technical roles, and customer interactions emphasized competence and respect rather than assumptions about capability. The gaming section still existed, with its flashy displays and RGB lighting, but it no longer dominated the store's identity. Professional networking equipment was featured equally, and the staff demonstrated understanding that different customers had different needs and different levels of technical expertise. Kyle accompanied me to the parking lot, carrying business cards for his new consulting practice that specialized in helping retail organizations develop government contracting capabilities. His transformation from dismissive sales associate to successful business consultant demonstrated the career opportunities that emerged when people chose to learn from their mistakes rather than defend them. Major Peterson, your willingness to work with us despite our initial failures taught me that professional relationships are built on competence and respect, he said as we reached my vehicle. That lesson has shaped every aspect of my career development. As I drove away from Tech World for the final time, I thought about the broader implications of what I'd witnessed. Organizations could change when they recognize the value of treating customers as competent professionals. Individuals could grow when given feedback and opportunities to improve. Business relationships could flourish when built on mutual respect rather than assumptions about capability. My phone displayed a message from the Pentagon welcoming me to my new position and outlining the cybersecurity challenges I'd be addressing. The next chapter of my career would involve building defenses against threats that didn't yet exist, using technologies that were still being developed for operations that remained classified. But the lessons from tech world would remain relevant regardless of the technical challenges ahead. The importance of recognizing expertise wherever it appeared, of treating colleagues as competent professionals deserving of respect, and of building relationships based on demonstrated capability rather than assumptions about background or appearance. The secure networks I'd built using TechWorld's equipment were still operating flawlessly, supporting classified operations with the reliability that military missions demanded. But the professional relationships that had developed through that process had proven more valuable than any individual procurement transaction. 6 months later, I received an invitation to speak at TechWorld's first annual government contracting conference, where they planned to share lessons learned about serving technical customers and building professional relationships with government agencies. The invitation represented completion of a transformation that had begun with customer service failures and evolved into business excellence. The conference program included presentations by Emma, Kyle, Jessica, and other TechWorld employees who had advanced their careers through the opportunities created by government contracting relationships. Their professional development demonstrated that organizational transformation created individual opportunities when people chose to embrace change rather than resist it. Sometimes, the most significant changes in workplace culture happened not through dramatic confrontations or corporate mandates, but through daily choices to treat each other as competent professionals deserving of respect. When customers demanded better service, when employees committed to providing it, and when organizations supported both, the results could exceed everyone's expectations. The Pentagon assignment brought challenges I hadn't anticipated, not just in the technical realm, but in navigating an environment where my reputation had preceded me in unexpected ways. Word traveled fast through military networks, and the story of the electronics store transformation had become something of a legend among procurement officers and technical specialists. My new office overlooked the Potomac River, with windows that reflect both natural light and the glow from multiple classified computer screens. The Cybersecurity Innovation Division occupied an entire floor of the building, staffed by some of the brightest technical minds in government service. My role involved coordinating defense strategies against emerging threats while building relationships with private sector partners who could provide cutting-edge solutions. 3 weeks into the new position, I received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Amanda Walsh from the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency had requested a meeting to discuss a classified initiative that required someone with my particular combination of technical expertise and vendor relationship management skills. Her reputation preceded her: brilliant researcher, innovative program manager, and someone who didn't waste time on meetings that weren't critically important. "Major Peterson," she said as she settled into the secure conference room, "I've been following your work with civilian contractor development and vendor qualification processes. DARPA has a project that could benefit from your approach to building professional relationships with non-traditional defense suppliers." The conversation that followed was both fascinating and frustrating, limited by classification levels and need-to-know restrictions that prevented full disclosure of project details. What I could understand was that DARPA needed to work with technology companies that had never engaged with government customers, organizations that might not understand military requirements or professional protocols. "We're dealing with startup companies and innovative manufacturers who have the technical capabilities we need but lack experience with government contracting," Dr. Walsh explained. "Your success in transforming TechWorld from retail supplier to trusted defense contractor suggests you understand how to bridge that gap." The assignment represented both opportunity and challenge. Working with DARPA meant access to projects that pushed the boundaries of what technology could accomplish. But it also meant dealing with organizations that might not understand the importance of security clearances, professional protocols, and the kind of institutional respect that military personnel expected. 6 months later, I found myself standing in the lobby of Quantum Solutions, a Silicon Valley startup that had developed breakthrough encryption algorithms but had never worked with government customers. The company occupied 3 floors of a converted warehouse, with exposed brick walls, open workspace concepts, and the kind of casual atmosphere that suggested brilliant minds working on complex problems without much concern for traditional business protocols. The receptionist, a young man with multiple facial piercings and a t-shirt that read "Code is Poetry," looked up from his laptop with the expression of someone who wasn't accustomed to visitors in military dress uniforms. His confusion was understandable.
She'll be right down to escort you to the secure conference area. Within minutes, Dr. Nakamura appeared, a woman in her early 40s with the confident bearing of someone who had built successful companies and managed complex technical projects. Her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct, and her questions about the project demonstrated immediate understanding of both the technical requirements and the business implications of working with DARPA. "Major Peterson, I've reviewed the preliminary specifications you provided," she said as we walked toward the elevator. "The encryption algorithms we've developed should meet your requirements, but I have questions about implementation timelines and security clearance procedures." Professional, direct, technically competent. The kind of interaction that should have been standard but felt refreshing after months of dealing with vendors who either didn't understand government requirements or were intimidated by the complexity of defense contracting procedures. The secure conference room was impressive for a civilian facility, equipped with electronic shielding and secure communications equipment that suggested serious investment in government customer capabilities. Dr. Nakamura had clearly prepared for this meeting with the kind of thoroughness that military projects demanded. "Our encryption technology represents a fundamental advancement in quantum-resistant algorithms," she explained, displaying technical specifications that demonstrated both innovation and practical application potential. "Traditional encryption methods will become obsolete within the next decade as quantum computing capabilities advance. This technology provides security that remains effective even against quantum-based attacks." The technical discussion that followed was both challenging and exciting, covering cryptographic theories and implementation strategies that pushed the boundaries of current cybersecurity capabilities. Dr. Nakamura demonstrated the kind of deep technical knowledge and innovative thinking that DARPA projects required, combined with practical understanding of how advanced theories could be translated into deployable solutions. What impressed me most was her willingness to ask questions about government requirements rather than making assumptions about what military customers needed. She understood that innovation without practical application was worthless, and that even the most advanced technology had to meet operational requirements to be valuable for defense applications. "The challenge with government contracting," she said during a break in the technical discussion, "is understanding not just what you need technically, but how you need it delivered, documented, and supported. Most technology companies focus on the innovation without considering the institutional requirements." Her observation reflected exactly the kind of awareness that separated successful government contractors from those who struggled with military customer relationships. Technical excellence was necessary, but not sufficient. Success required understanding how government organizations operated and what they needed beyond just functional specifications. The meeting continued for several hours, covering everything from technical implementation details to contract structures to long-term partnership opportunities. Dr. Nakamura's team included specialists in cryptography, software development, and systems integration. All of them demonstrated both technical competence and genuine interest in working with government customers. As the formal presentations concluded, I found myself thinking about the parallels with my tech world experience. Both situations involved organizations with strong technical capabilities that needed to learn how to work effectively with government customers. The difference was that Quantum Solutions approached the relationship with respect and professionalism from the beginning, recognizing that successful partnerships required understanding customer requirements rather than making assumptions about them. "Major Peterson, I have one final question," Dr. Nakamura said as we prepared to wrap up the meeting. "DARPA represents the kind of customer relationship we've always wanted to develop, but we're concerned about making mistakes that could damage that opportunity. Would you be willing to provide guidance on government contracting best practices as we develop our proposal?" The request demonstrated exactly the kind of professional humility that made successful partnerships possible.
Instead of assuming she understood government requirements, Dr. Nakamura was asking for guidance to ensure she could meet them effectively. That approach suggested both wisdom and genuine commitment to building a long-term professional relationship. "I'd be happy to provide guidance," I replied. "Government contracting has unique requirements, but they're designed to ensure that taxpayer money is spent effectively and that national security interests are protected. Understanding those requirements usually leads to better outcomes for everyone involved." The return flight to Washington gave me time to reflect on the broader implications of what I'd witnessed at Quantum Solutions. Organizations that approached government relationships with respect and professional curiosity usually succeeded, while those that made assumptions or dismissed institutional requirements often struggled. The contrast with my initial tech world experience was instructive. Both companies had strong technical capabilities, but their approaches to customer relationships were completely different. Tech World had initially dismissed my expertise based on assumptions about customer competence, while Quantum Solutions had engaged with curiosity and respect for government requirements. My phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Walsh requesting a preliminary assessment of Quantum Solutions' capabilities and cultural fit for DARPA projects. The response was easy to provide: technically excellent, professionally mature, and genuinely interested in building successful government relationships. 2 weeks later, I received notification that Quantum Solutions had been selected for a pilot project that could lead to much larger defense contracts if successful. The opportunity represented exactly the kind of public-private partnership that DARPA specialized in, bringing innovative civilian technology into military applications through collaborative development programs. The success of the Quantum Solutions engagement led to additional assignments working with technology companies that wanted to develop government customer relationships. Each interaction reinforced the same lessons I'd learned through the tech world experience. Mutual respect and professional competence were the foundations of successful partnerships, regardless of whether customers wore military uniforms or company polo shirts. 6 months after the Quantum Solutions meeting, I found myself back at Tech World for a conference on government contracting best practices. The company had become a case study in successful organizational transformation, and their annual conference now attracted participants from across the defense contracting industry. Emma was the keynote speaker. Her presentation focused on career development opportunities in government technology sectors. Kyle led workshops on customer relationship management for technical professionals. Jessica presented case studies demonstrating how improved customer service could lead to expanded business opportunities. The conference represented completion of a transformation that had begun with customer service failures and evolved into industry leadership. Tech World had become not just a successful government contractor, but a resource for other organizations seeking to develop similar capabilities. Harrison introduced me as the customer whose feedback had catalyzed the company's transformation, and I found myself presenting lessons learned about building effective partnerships between military organizations and civilian technology companies. The presentation drew from experiences at both Tech World and Quantum Solutions, demonstrating how mutual respect and professional competence could create value for everyone involved. The audience included representatives from dozens of technology companies, government procurement officers, and industry consultants who specialized in defense contracting relationships. The level of interest suggested that effective customer relationship management was recognized as a critical success factor for companies seeking to work with government customers. During the question and answer session, a young woman from an aerospace startup asked about overcoming initial assumptions that government customers might make about civilian technical capabilities. Her question reflected the same challenges I'd faced in reverse, proving competence in environments where stereotypes and assumptions could interfere with professional relationships. "The key is demonstrating competence through actions rather than just credentials," I replied. "Whether you're a military officer working with civilian companies or a civilian engineer working with government customers, professional respect has to be earned through consistent performance and reliable delivery." The conference concluded with networking sessions that brought together government representatives and civilian technology companies, creating opportunities for relationship building that might lead to future partnerships. The conversations I observed reflected the kind of mutual respect and professional curiosity that made successful collaborations possible. As I prepared to leave Tech World for what would likely be the final time, I reflected on the journey that had brought me from frustrated customer to keynote conference speaker. The experience had taught me that individual interactions could have far-reaching consequences when organizations chose to learn from feedback rather than dismiss it, and that professional relationships built on mutual respect could create opportunities that benefited everyone involved. The networks I'd helped build were still operating reliably, supporting classified operations and innovative research projects that pushed the boundaries of what technology could accomplish. But the professional relationships that had developed through those projects have proven more valuable than any individual technical achievement, creating foundations for future collaborations that would continue long after specific contracts were completed. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.